Welcome back to Aging is Direction. I'm Kathy Clements, longevity strategist, and I'm really glad you're here. If you listened to the first episode, we talked about something foundational, and that is aging isn't decline, it's direction. And that the second half of our life requires a different strategy. So, today we're going to talk about one of the most overlooked and honestly most misunderstood pieces of that strategy. That's accumulated stress. Not the obvious kind, not the I had a bad day kind. I'm talking about the quiet kind, the kind that builds up over years, even decades. Because here's what most people don't realize. You don't just wake up one day feeling more tired or more inflamed, more reactive, or more off. It happens gradually, not overnight. It's an accumulation. It's years of pushing through, meeting deadlines, raising families, caring for other people, putting yourself last maybe, not because you didn't care, but because you had other responsibilities. And a lot of you listening, you did that well. You showed up. You handled things. You carried more than most people even saw. But here's the piece that no one explained. Your body was keeping score the entire time. Think about that. Stress is not just emotional. We tend to think about stress as emotional, though. I feel stressed. I'm so stressed out. I mean, how many times have you said that or heard somebody say that to you? But stress is not a feeling. It's a physiological state. It's how your body responds to demand. And your body doesn't distinguish very well between work stress and family stress, financial stress, emotional stress, lack of sleep, overtraining, undereating. That's 7 things I just mentioned right there. And there are more things that people on a day-to-day basis might not handle well. And so those things add into this list. And to your body, stress is stress. And every time you push through without recovery, you add to that load. So we're going to go back to that 40. So after that 40, things have to change. Now here's where that shift comes in. After 40, especially after 50, your body becomes less forgiving of chronic stress. Not weaker, just less willing to ignore what's been building. This is when people start saying things like, I'm doing all the same things, but nothing's working. Or I feel tired even when I'm rested. Or golly, my sleep was off. Or I can't lose weight like I used to. And then they assume I need more discipline, or that's not the problem, or I need more intensity. None of those are the problem. The problem is stress load without regulation. You can't out-discipline a dysregulated system. And I'll say that again. This is one of the most important things I can say to you. You can't out-discipline a dysregulated nervous system. You can't outwork chronic stress. You can't out-train exhaustion. And if you try, you get stuck in this cycle. Push harder, feel worse, blame yourself, push harder again. It's not that a motivation problem. That's a physiological problem. Let's make this simple. Well, I hope. I won't get too much into detail, I promise. But your nervous system has 2 primary modes. That go system, which is the sympathetic system. This is your I'm going to get it done system. Focus, energy, productivity, all those things. Then you have your recovery mode, which is your parasympathetic system. This is where healing happens: digestion, repair, sleep, restoration. Both are necessary. But here's the issue. Most high-performing adults are living almost entirely in that go mode, all day, sometimes all night. And when that happens, your body loses its ability to shift back into recovery. So over time, your nervous system develops what we call a baseline tone. And that means, what state do you default to? So, and I believe it was the military, has green, yellow, orange, red as activity states, if that's helpful. The red is you're all out, all on, right then, boom. Green is nothing's going on and you're probably sleeping. And then you have yellow and orange in the middle. Well, if you don't default to green and let your body recover, you're defaulting to either orange or yellow and never allowing your body to completely relax and recover from that on state. So therefore, your new baseline tone becomes orange or yellow. And I can tell you, like, when I deployed, you were on all the time. And I think if we came down at all, it was to orange, maybe yellow, but definitely orange. And you were just constantly in a go mode for whatever was coming up and whatever you needed to accomplish. And most of the time, high-performing corporate individuals, they're the same way. They're constantly on. Their phone is attached to them. They never have that ability to shut it off, because that next phone call could be the phone call they need to get. Does that make sense, I hope? But anyway, so we're talking about default states. If you're not capable of taking it all the way back down to green, then you're defaulting to a state of being ready, a readiness state of go. Okay? So you might be calm and capable, but you're still on. Or you might be alert but grounded, but wired and tired. Does that make sense? Because here's the truth. If your baseline is constantly elevated, everything feels harder. Workouts feel harder, sleep becomes lighter, patience becomes shorter, decisions feel heavier, and not because life changed, but because your system is overloaded. So think about that. If you're constantly in orange, yellow, or red, then you're overloading your system. And in that overload, most of us physically see it with cortisol. How many of you heard of cortisol already? So let's talk about that. A lot of us don't like to talk about cortisol because it usually means you have a thickening midsection. That's a nice way to put it. But let me say this. Cortisol is, all the talk about cortisol gave it a bad reputation. But cortisol's not the enemy. Cortisol is actually very necessary. It helps you when you wake up. When the cortisol levels go up as you wake up, it helps you focus. It helps you stay awake. It helps you respond to whatever the challenges are once you're now awake and in an alert state. So the problem is not cortisol. The problem, excuse me, is chronic cortisol levels. When your body never has the ability to come completely to recovery, when you're stressed constantly, instead of only temporarily, that's when you see it. You see fatigue, you see sleep disruption, increased belly fat, cravings, brain fog. And again, most people respond by trying to push harder instead of asking, how do I help my body come down and recover? So there's a few different ways, things that we can start working on right away. 3 simple tools that maybe you know about, maybe you haven't thought about, but let's talk about them real fast. So the first one is sleep, the most underrated performance tool ever. And I'll tell you that when right after I had had my kids, that I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. We were on a pretty good schedule, but you know, you might get 2 hours here, 2 hours there, and that was about the extent. And it's expected, right? And then as you get maybe 4 hours of solid sleep, you're like, wow, I feel so great. I can go out and do all these things. So that's one thing to think about and how important sleep is. And that's before 40. So let's talk about sleep after 40. It's non-negotiable at this point. It's your primary and my primary recovery system. So this is when, think about these, our hormones regulate, our muscles repair when we're asleep, our brain detoxifies. And that's super important when it comes to dementia and all those kinds of things that start to be onset after 40, right? And stress resets. And if your nervous system is elevated, sleep is the first thing that gets disrupted. And you might fall asleep, but you can't stay asleep. Or you wake up feeling like you didn't sleep at all. And here's the cycle: poor sleep, higher stress, worse recovery, poorer sleep. And it keeps going. And then the stress just keeps getting higher, and the worse you recover, and the worse you sleep. This is why we don't start with do more. We start with regulate better. So being able to regulate our stress is really important. Sleep, if for you it's something that's been disrupted, then maybe one of the next 2 items I give you will be something that will help you recover a little bit, come down to that recovery point. And then if your sleep becomes better, these 2 things that are coming up will be able to help you then sleep better, which will help your stress levels and help your recovery levels. So the next one, it's crazy how easy this is, but it's a built-in reset tool. It's breath. And now it's practical, right? Some of you that do Pilates or do yoga, or I should say practice Pilates and practice yoga, it's something you already think about. Even to some extent, weightlifting, there are ways to control your breathing while you're lifting weights. But it's not just a theory. One of the most powerful tools you have, and you carry it with you all day, every day, is your breath. Slow, controlled breathing tells your body you're safe, and your body feels safe. And when your body feels safe, it can shift out of that go mode to a recovery mode. And that's huge. And it doesn't take a long time to do it. You don't need 30 minutes to make that happen. You just need intention. 5 slow breaths or box breathing, in through your nose, slowly out through your mouth. That alone can shift your state. You know, they tell people, it's a generic they tell people that as someone comes at you with something that's very alarming or distressing, or that they expect you to handle, that sometimes if you step back and just pause for 10 seconds. So there's that pause. Well, what are you doing during that pause? You're actually breathing. And now you know that, so now do it intentionally. Step back, pause, and take a few deep breaths and make a very clear decision on what you're going to say or do next. That's huge, right? So let's walk through this. And I'll say this as clearly as I can. You know, breathing is something that you can now take your sympathetic system, that reactionary on track go mode, and shift it to the parasympathetic, really just by breathing. So some people that I know use box breathing. It doesn't mean you're in a box or you have a box on your head, but it does mean you're breathing in for 4 seconds, holding it for 4, breathing out for 4 seconds, and then holding that for 4. And that for some people is very difficult. So what I would suggest is practice it with 2 and 4, or 2 and 2 and 2 and 2, and determine where you're at with being able to control your breathing, and then realize it's going to bring your heart rate down. I had a client who I would do HIIT workouts with, and the whole idea of a HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training, is to get your heart rate to jump up. But then she had a moment where she couldn't think about how to bring it back down. And she would say, I just have to take a break. I have to take a break. I have to take a break. And until we started working on her breath control afterward, it was most of the times the last set. And I would say, all right, think about your breathing. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Let's start controlling it. Talk to yourself in your head, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And she would bring her heart rate down almost immediately. I used to do this and still do it when I've done road races. I enjoy running still. Of course, I don't run as fast. Okay, so let me just say, I've probably never been the fastest runner, but I do enjoy it. But when I start a race and I think I'm starting with the group that I'm in, and that group starts faster, the tendency and the adrenaline are to start with the group and stay with the group. And I know that I can feel my heart, start to pound out of my chest. So I have to then start mentally saying, in through your nose, out through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And if I can't then control my heart rate with that, then I move to the side, walk, and then begin to control my breathing that way, and then jump back into the race and pick up the pace to where, not that it's comfortable, but that it's the race, my race, not that whole group's race. So my race is my pace versus the pace of the group. I hope that makes sense. For those of you that run, you'll understand what that means. But that takes me into the next section I want to talk to you about, and that's walking. The most underrated of all the strategies. And I say that as clearly as I can. Walking is one of the most powerful tools for longevity. You've got your breathing, okay, and you got to figure out your stress level. So what do? So it's not just physical like all the rest, it's neurological as well. It helps regulate your nervous system. It helps lower your stress hormones. It improves your mood. And when you can do it without stimulation, like a cell phone or music or noise or your emails or listening to a podcast or all those things, although I do want you to listen to my podcast, you're not just it's not just movement, it's actually recovery. So what that means is we have to redefine what recovery actually means for us. Recovery, there's actually a television commercial out there on, I won't name the brand name of the mattress, but they supported the Olympics and said This is recovery, the part that everybody kind of didn't think about. And that was sleeping. And they were supporting sleeping. Of course, they're a mattress company, but at the same time, here you have elite athletes that are telling you, oh yeah, we need our sleep too. Hello? So that's not just a few of us, that's everybody. So let's redefine this word, because most of us, we misunderstand it. Recovery is not doing nothing or being lazy or avoiding effort. Recovery is allowing your body to adapt to the effort. It's what makes the work work. Without recovery, there's no progress. So you have to recover. There's only that stress accumulation that, and we don't want that. So where does that leave you? Not well overwhelmed, I hope. Clear, I hope. You don't need to overhaul your life. You don't need to begin regulating your system. You just start noticing what you're noticing. So start by noticing your breathing, your heart rate, how you feel after you sleep, those kinds of things. And now you sit there and you say, when am I pushing instead of when should I be pausing? Or when am I adding whatever that is to your day instead of supporting my recovery? When am I expecting my body to perform, or where am I expecting my body to perform without giving it what it needs? Good, easy questions, right? When am I pushing instead of pausing? When am I adding instead of supporting? And where am I expecting my body to perform without giving it what it needs? So, before we wrap up, here's what I'd love for you to take with you. Think about this. Where in your life have you been pushing instead of regulating? Not judging, just noticing. Notice what you're noticing. So then try this. One nervous system reset each day. And that could be as easy as a walk without your phone, or 5 slow breaths before bed, or stepping outside for 5 minutes of quiet. Small, intentional, repeatable. That's it. And then I'd love for you to carry this forward. Calm is not weakness. Calm is not slowing down your life. Calm is a performance advantage. Say that again. Calm is a performance advantage. It's what allows you to think clearly, move well, and actually sustain your life, the life you want to build, or the life you are currently building. So, in the next episode, we're going to talk about something that becomes non-negotiable in the second half, and that's muscle. Not for appearance, for protection, for independence, for longevity. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear what landed, because it's not, I don't want it just to be me talking. This is a conversation we're building, and I'm glad you're in it. So if something landed with you, put it in the comments below the video, or like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, or shoot me an email, Kathy@agingisdirection.com, and I definitely will answer your questions. And I'll see you in the next episode.